UFC 313 betting show. We have 12 fights lined up for this Saturday night. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to get things started in the middleweight division with Santos, a minus 192 favorite. The comeback on Ozzy Diaz is plus 160. Now, Diaz briefly moved up to light heavyweight to face Zhang Mingyang. His last time out, he got knocked out inside of the first round. And now he's actually making a pretty quick turnaround, being that fight was just in November. So that is a little bit of concern. He's dropping back to 185, which is his normal weight class, and he's going to take on UFC debutant Santos. Now, this guy fought on the Contender Series last season. I actually cashed a big bet on him as a sizable underdog against Will Curry in that spot, and this is somebody who trains with the Bonfim brothers, so you know he's getting in good rounds at a good camp, good training partners. He seems to have a pretty well-rounded skill set. He's got solid boxing on the feet, good volume, good power, and he has a decent ground game as well. He holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we've seen him go to that at times on the regional scene. Now, the one concern with Santos is his striking defense, because he is a little bit janky out there, and he generally fights with his hands down. So he can be clipped on the counter, and I think that's the way that Diaz can win this fight, because I don't give Diaz much of a path to victory outside of an early knockout, because that's kind of his fighting style. He's a kill or be killed type of guy, and he does have power. So this is going to be one where Santos is going to need to mind his P's and Q's, and if he does that and avoids the early powerful counters of Diaz, then I think he takes over with the volume and eventually breaks Diaz down the stretch. We'll say it's Santos by TKO. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Jon Castanada, small favorite at minus 125. The comeback on Chris Gutierrez is plus 105. And we'll start on the Castaneda side. He was actually scheduled to face Douglas Silva de Andrade last week, and Silva de Andrade pulled out of the fight. So now he's turning around and taking this one on short notice against Chris Gutierrez, who was scheduled to face Gene Matsumoto. Now you have Castaneda facing Gutierrez. I actually like this matchup. Both of these guys are kind of similar in a sense. Gutierrez obviously more one-dimensional, because basically just looking to destroy your legs and keep the fight at range, blast away with his kicks. But outside of that, I think it's very clear that you can beat this guy if you can work around those leg kicks. And Castaneda, I would expect to have more success with the hands in the boxing exchanges if he can close that distance. I also think Castaneda at least has a little bit of grappling upside. We know that that's an area that you can take advantage of against Gutierrez. And I'm not completely sold that Castaneda is going to do that, but I think he at least has the potential to do that. And in what I expect to be a close fight, those sort of advantages are just going to ever so slightly make me lean towards him. So we'll say it's Castaneda by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Myron Santos, a minus 310 favorite. The comeback on Francis Marshall is plus 250. And Myron Santos is coming off the Ultimate Fighter finale, where he won by exciting knockout fashion. And now this is what I would expect to be a letdown spot, because he goes on the Ultimate Fighter, he wins the Ultimate Fighter, has a very emotional, highlight reel knockout victory. Well, now you're in the big show officially, and now you have guys that are just like you, young and hungry, that potentially are better than you and certainly have more UFC experience. So this is going to be an interesting test for him, I think, and one that I think he is being priced kind of like a super prospect here, and I kind of disagree. Like, yes, his striking is solid, flashy striker, seems to have power as well. But outside of that, I do have some question marks, particularly with the defensive grappling. On the regional scene, his one loss came against Dan Argueta, who basically dominated him in the grappling and finished him. So even though he's young and he's probably making improvements in those areas, I think somebody like Francis Marshall could potentially take advantage of that, because Marshall, I mentioned, does have the UFC experience. He's young and improving as well, and you're getting him at a really big price tag here in the plus 250 range, where I expect him to be competitive both on the feet, but also if he's able to mix in the grappling. He averages over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. I would expect that to be the game plan here. But I do think he's going to be outgunned on the feet. So it's not like I'm expecting him to come in here and be the better fighter. I do think Santos is more powerful on the feet. I think he could potentially chew up the legs of Marshall, who is pretty flat-footed and is pretty hittable as well. But the wrestling upside and the overall just willingness to compete and make this thing close does give me some interest on the dog here. But I think the best bet is that this fight hits the judges' scorecards. I like the overs. I like GTD. I think this sees the judges' scorecards at a pretty high clip here. But in terms of the official pick, we're going to go with Santos by decision, but I do think the value is on the underdog. And next fight up, we have Carlos Leo, who's now a minus 800 favorite, the biggest betting favorite on the card, with Alex Morono on the comeback at plus 550. And Leo made his UFC debut against Rinat Fakhretdinov, and he gave him a go as a big underdog there. Some people thought he may have even squeaked that fight out, but he certainly gave a good account of himself. Powerful striker, previously fought in PFL. The guy's got a ton of experience, and he does carry some power. He's got 10 knockout victories on his record. And Alex Morono is somebody that I just really don't trust anymore. Like, not that I ever trusted him before, but at this stage in his career now, like, he used to be a high volume striker, pretty durable, pretty reliable for the most part. And then it's like, I don't trust the durability anymore. He's been knocked out. He's been dropped a bunch of times. I think the durability is a real concern, but I don't even trust the volume anymore. I don't even think he's a consistent volume guy like he used to be. You know, he's had multiple fights where he's in like the 40s and 50s in terms of significant strikes. He's just not putting enough of activity out there. And despite having a black belt, we know that he can be out grappled and has holes in his grappling as well. And he never really looks to proactively grapple. So I expect this fight to play out on the feet. I expect Leo to have the bigger moments and potentially hurt Morono and get the finish. We'll say it's Leo by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our next matchup, as Armen Petrosian comes in as a minus 155 favorite. The comeback on Bruno Ferrera is plus 130. And Petrosian comes from a high-level kickboxing background. He's a very good striker. He wants to keep the fight on the feet. And the UFC has not been kind to him because they've regularly matched him up with some really good grapplers and some guys that really want to get the fight to the mat. And so credit to Petrosian because he's shown some pretty solid takedown defense. And despite giving up a bunch of takedowns, he regularly works back to his feet consistently and quickly. And he has good cardio so that after he's making those guys work for the takedowns and constantly getting back up and making them work, then he's able to get a little bit of his game going and take over as the fight goes on. And like I mentioned, he's a sniper on the feet, and he does have underrated power as well. So you kind of know what to expect from him. And then on the flip side, Bruno Ferrera is basically just an early knockout or bust type of fighter. The dude has serious power. He's very explosive early in fights, but as we've seen, as recent as this last matchup against Abus Magomedov, where he was taken down, out-grappled, gassed out, and got submitted. The clear ways you could take advantage of him is extending the fight. His cardio is not good, or by grappling him. I don't think his defensive grappling is very good either. Now, I wouldn't expect Petrosian to grapple at all, but I do think Petrosian could extend the fight if he avoids getting clipped early and then eventually take over. So it's one where I do think Ferrera is live here for that early knockout, but outside of that, I see Petrosian taking over and potentially earning the finish down the stretch. We'll say it's Petrosian by TKO. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Joshua Van, a minus 192 favorite. The comeback on Ray Seruya is plus 160. And we'll start on the Joshua Van side. He's coming off a win over Cody Durden in what, in theory, is a similar style matchup to this, because Cody Durden, primarily a wrestler, wants to get the fight to the mat. And he was able to do that a couple of times, just didn't have a ton of success controlling Van and ultimately lost the decision there. Now Van is getting an even tougher test in terms of the wrestling skills because Ray Seruya comes from a very high-level wrestling background. He previously wrestled with the Japanese Olympic team, and that is the way that he wins fight. He's very aggressive in getting things to the mat, and he's got good grappling. Most of his wins have come by finish as well. So I think Joshua Van is going to be in trouble early here with giving up the takedowns and potentially even finding himself in a bad spot on the mat. But Joshua Van does have experience in working back to his feet, being very scrambly, and ultimately taking over as the fight goes on. This guy is notorious in terms of live betting markets because he generally starts slow, and then he puts on a pace in rounds 2 and round 3. This guy is very high volume, and he is the better striker in this matchup. So I think it's very clear that Seruya is going to need to ground him early. And outside of that, if he's unable to do so in rounds 2 and round 3, I think he gets boxed up here. But I am going to side with the wrestler here because I do think he's got the best ground game that Joshua Van has yet to see. And I just kind of am excited to see how that plays out. I'm going to side with the underdog here. We'll say it's Seruya by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our only heavyweight matchup on the card. We have Curtis Blaydes, a minus 340 favorite. The comeback on Rizvan Kuniev is plus 270. And I am not in the business of laying chalk on Curtis Blaydes, at least not at this point in his career. I think I did that early on, but I don't trust this dude whatsoever, man. I used to talk like Curtis Blaydes is the best wrestler in the division. He's the best heavyweight on the roster, blah, blah, blah. I was wrong. I don't trust this guy, and now there's even more red flags than before, because before it was really just the fight IQ. You know, you want him to go to his wrestling. That's his best asset, and at times he'd get caught just trying to box with these really powerful strikers. It just did not make much sense. But now at this stage in his career, because he's made those decisions in the past, he's paid the price for it. He's been knocked out 5 times in his career, and now I just don't trust the durability at all. So it's the fight IQ concerns, the durability concerns. Yes, the skill set is there. He's still a good striker. He's a great wrestler. But I just have some concerns when he's north of minus 300. Now, on the flip side, Rizvan Kuniev is coming off the Contender Series. He's actually a repeat offender on the Contender Series. Did not earn a contract his first time around. Then he kind of bounced around, had a fight over in PFL that he won, but he ended up getting popped for steroids, they changed it to a no contest. Comes back on the Contender Series last season, and he faces a guy who comes from an Olympic level wrestling background. So he fought a very good wrestler. The guy didn't really have much else and definitely didn't have much cardio, but he showed really strong takedown defense. And Kuniev is a powerful striker as well. And then he made the guy work, defended a bunch of takedowns, threatened some chokes, and then really just beat the guy up on the feet, hit him with a nasty knee to the body, and then some sharp elbows in the clinch. So this is somebody that does have knockout upside, especially against somebody like Blaydes, who I don't trust the durability whatsoever. And I also think Kuniev is probably going to make Blaydes work for those takedowns, which I think is interesting at this price tag. So I'm not sure if I'll get around to a play on Kuniev, but I do think in terms of where the value is, that's the way that I'd be leaning. The problem is Blaydes is so good at getting those takedowns, and I do want to see what Kuniev looks like on his back. I suspect it's not very good, so I think more times than not, if Blaydes is able to get those takedowns, he could probably find a finish on the mat. I'm just not interested at that in this type of price tag, but in terms of the official pick, it's going to be Blaydes by TKO. Next up, we have Mauricio Huffy, a minus 460 favorite. The comeback on King Green is plus 370. And I think it'll be interesting to listen to the sentiment around Huffy, because coming into his last fight, it was like, this guy is fighting for the belt very soon. People were calling him Conor McGregor. People were saying he's the best striker on the UFC roster. Like, the glazing of Huffy was out of control prior to that last fight against James Lontop. And I think I would suspect that narrative to at least, pour some little bit of water on that fire, because James Lontop gave him a go in that last fight. Dude ate a ton of big shots early, got hurt early, but fought through it. And we saw kind of the downside of Mauricio Huffy being that he is a powerful striker, very flashy, sharp leg kicks, knockout power for sure, but doesn't seem to have a great gas tank, right? Because he certainly slowed down in that fight. And ended up dropping that third round. And I still have concerns with the defensive grappling as well. So this is somebody who the market is still putting a ton of respect on at this big price tag. But I think it'll be interesting to follow as we get along through fight week here, because now he's facing someone in King Green who is an experienced striker. He's going to be competitive in terms of the boxing. That's what he's known for. He's a good boxer, has great footwork. He's known for that shoulder roll and his head defense. The problem with Green is that that at this stage in his career, I think he is slowing down, and I don't trust the durability like I used to. He's been knocked out multiple times. He seems to be getting caught a lot more in some of his recent fights. So I just don't really trust him, to be honest with you. I feel like a couple years ago, I'd be licking my chops at this spot, thinking that this could be an upset spot at a big underdog price tag for Bobby Green. But unfortunately, I don't see that being the case here. I think Huffy does land a big shot, potentially hurts Green, and gets the finish. So we'll say it's Huffy by TKO. That's the official pick. And next up, we have Jasmine Lucendo, a minus 130 favorite. The comeback on Amanda Lamos is plus 110. And Lucendo is a very well-rounded prospect, very exciting prospect in this division, and she seems to have a well-rounded skill set. She's currently on a 4-fight win streak since dropping her UFC debut, but since then, she's looked like she's starting to mix it up both on the feet more, but also in terms of the grappling. She averages a couple takedowns over 15 minutes, and I think that's going to be a threat here because I think she could win this fight more so on the mat if she goes to it. And I expect that to be the game plan here against Amanda Lamos, who we know is one of the most powerful strikers in this division, but she's low volume on the feet. She can't grapple, and she doesn't have a good gas tank either. And now she turns 38 years old in a couple months. So I don't foresee those things improving. And so this just seems like a very obvious path to victory for Lucendo, in that I would expect her to be competitive on the feet, avoid the big power shots, and go to the takedowns, go to the grappling. That's where I think she could have success against Lamos here, drown her over the course of 15 minutes, and get her hand raised. We'll say it's Lucendo by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have an awesome matchup between Ignacio Bahamondes, a minus 125 favorite. The comeback on Jalen Turner is plus 105. And this is a really exciting fight, guys. This is going to be an awesome pay-per-view. Up and down the card, we have some exciting matchups. This one's right up there, right before, it's a nice warm-up for Gaethje, Fiziev, and then, of course, the main event, Pereira, Ankalaev. But this fight, I just expect to be fireworks, man. These guys are both great strikers, powerful strikers, and I just don't see a way that this ends up being a boring fight because these guys want to get in there and they want to trade. They want to see who's the last man standing. That's what Bahamondes brings to the table. He's very long and rangy for the division, comes from a highly credentialed kickboxing background, and you see it in his striking. He mixes it up, goes to the body, has the flashy spinning wheel kick attacks as well. This guy's very good striker. The concern with Bahamondes is that he's very hittable in those exchanges. He loves to get in the pocket and start trading, but he kind of just disregards his defense, and we've seen him eat a lot of shots. Despite never being knocked out in his career, he's been wobbled, he's been rocked, he's been hurt multiple times. So in this matchup against Jalen Turner, Turner brings a lot of the same skill set. This guy is big for the division. He cuts a ton of weight to get down here at 155, and he's very powerful as well. He's got a ton of knockouts to his record, and he really wants to get in there and mix it up as well. The concern with Turner is that his durability is not great. He's been knocked out 4 times in his career now, and a lot of that, you could probably attribute some of that to the weight cut, but also because similar to Bahamondes, when he starts trading, he kind of just disregards his defense. So I think this is going to be one where these guys just bite down and start swinging, and whoever connects first is probably going to be the one that wins. I slightly lean with the underdog here in Jalen Turner. I trust him a little bit more in terms of landing the bigger shots and having the big moments. So I'm going to side with Turner. I don't feel great about it. What I do feel great about is the under. I like the under 2.5 here, the minus 150 range. I think this fight does not hit the judges' scorecards. I think one of these guys goes to sleep, and it probably happens within the first 10 minutes. So I'm going to slightly side with the dog here, but I prefer the under. The official pick is going to be Turner by TKO. And next up, we do have the return of Rafael Fiziev. He comes in as a minus 162 favorite. The comeback on Justin Gaethje is plus 136. Now, on one hand, we have Fiziev, who's stepping in on short notice to replace Dan Hooker, who broke his hand and pulled out of the fight. Fiziev, this is the first time we're going to see him for about a year and a half, because the last time he fought was against Mateus Gamrot, and he tore his ACL in that fight. So this is his first fight back. It's technically on short notice as well. He was somewhat preparing for a fight. He wasn't in camp, didn't have anything booked officially. And then on the flip side, you have Justin Gaethje, who hasn't fought since UFC 300. That was last April, where it was the infamous throwdown and trade with Max Holloway, and Holloway knocked him out with seconds remaining. Absolutely electric. That moment will go down as one of the most exciting in UFC history. But you have to wonder, at this stage in his career, you remember Justin Gaethje's career. This guy does not have boring fights. This guy trades and takes damage in just about all of his fights, and he's been able to do that over the course of his career. But now you have to wonder if it's starting to catch up to him, because he's always been hittable, but previously he was able to pretty much just eat everything, walk through it, and just take one to give you one right back. Very powerful striker in his own right, sharp leg kicks, some of the best leg kicks in the game. But now I just wonder if the durability is starting to go a little bit, if there is going to be some sort of decline here. And I will say, the first time they fought, I did lay the chalk with Fiziev, and he ended up losing a close decision here. I'm kind of leaning towards doing the same thing. I just trust Fiziev despite the ACL and the short notice. That's kind of what's keeping me off here, and why I might not get around to another bet. But I do trust Fiziev, at least in this stage in his career, a little bit more. I trust the durability a little bit more. I trust his overall striking ability more than Gaethje, and I expect him to just really just have a little bit of the bigger moments that end up swaying the judges' scorecards if this does go all 15 minutes, and I think it will. So we'll say it's Fiziev by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event, as Alex Pereira comes in as a -115 slight favorite. The comeback on Magomed Ankalaev is -105. And Pereira's coming off the knockout victory over Khalil Roundtree. He's looking to defend the belt yet again. This dude has been putting on fight after fight. It's really impressive what he's been able to do. Not only how active he's been, but how he just looks great every time he's out. He's got a ton of knockout power, comes from the high-level kickboxing background. And I think the way that you want to target Pereira is if you can force him to defensively grapple. I know that's been an area that he's worked on improving, but I still think that's a way that you can potentially take advantage of him. But that's no secret. Guys have tried to do that, and they have not really succeeded. So it's going to be interesting if Magomed Ankalaev is going to come in with that game plan, because this is somebody who has wrestled at times, but at other times where you would expect him to wrestle more, he really didn't. So this is somebody that I don't fully trust in terms of the fight IQ. He averages just under 1 takedown per 15 minutes. So it's not like he's super proactive with the grappling, even though I do expect that to be the game plan here. And then on the feet, he's a technical striker. He's got some good leg kicks, but he's not high volume, and he generally fights on thin margins. So I don't really see a ton of upside in betting the Ankalaev side, unless you feel that he's really going to have some grappling success here against Pereira. Because outside of that, I just don't see him separating on the feet. I think he's going to be at a power disadvantage against the much better striker in Pereira. So I am going to side on the Pereira side. I do think he eventually hurts Ankalaev and sits him down, defends the belt once again, and still Pereira by TKO. That's the official pick. And as always, guys, fightnumbers.com has everything you need if you're betting on the card this weekend. As always, appreciate you watching. Best of luck, and we will see you next week.